yesterday morning we did get a rather critical tweet. What did it say? I can't remember.
It basically accused you and I of peddling the Fulham in crisis line because two squad players had left. I mean, one of those is Manuel Solomon. I would suggest he's maybe a bit more than a squad player. But also we were talking about doubts over the future of Mitrovic, Paulinho, and indeed Marco Silva. And then I was in the gym with you yesterday, wasn't I, when I got the call to say that Fulham seriously concerned that Marco Silva will accept this big money offer from Saudi Arabia.
So you could frame it that we were peddling Fulham were in crisis, or you could just catch it that we alerted to it before it happened. Let's go back a couple of weeks. Here's Tony Khan talking to this station about the future of Marco Silva back in May.
I think Marco has a great relationship with everyone at the club, and especially with me. I have a great relationship with Marco. I really like working with him, and I think it's been a great success. We've had a couple of great seasons working together, and I look forward to the future. And I think the summer we have a chance to build on the work that's been done. I think he's done such an amazing job coaching this squad.
Well, that was Tony Khan giving an interview back in May about Marco Silva. In recent days, he gave an interview to the Dan Le Batard show, an American sports show, in which he came out with some explosive comments about the Saudi regime, which suggested that he could sense something was coming. And that something that was coming down the track was Alexander Mitrovic being the subject of a bid from Saudi Arabia, and Marco Silva being offered the chance to become Al Ahly's coach on maybe one of the best contracts in the world with a £40 million salary. And it's pretty easy to get him out of Fulham because he's got a £6 million release clause. So how far is this down the track, do you think?
Well, I think Fulham fear it's quite a way down the track. As you mentioned, he's only got a year left on his contract. They've been trying to extend that deal for some time now. I believe he's recently switched agents, which is usually a sign that maybe a manager wants out. And if you look at Marco Silva's career in the dugout, he doesn't tend to stick around anywhere for very long. He was at Estoril for 3 years, right at the start of his career, a year at Sporting, a year at Olympiacos, less than a year at Hull.
6 months at Hull.
Then Watford, and we all remember how he forced his way out of there to go to Everton. That didn't end well. So if there's one Premier League manager that you feel could be tempted to take the Saudi money, it would be Marco Silva. And the fact that Fulham are already actively looking at replacement suggests they're preparing for the worst.
Yeah, and that would mean, if you look at their squad from last season, with Mitrovic and Paulinho's future up in, especially up in the air, we're not entirely sure about what's going to happen with Paulinho, because I remember alerting you to the fact that Paulinho was on the list for West Ham United, and now that's further down the track. They're sort of going back and forth. They're going to put another bid in today, right?
Yeah, although at the moment that may have hit a bit of limbo because all of Fulham's attention is taken up with the Marco Silva situation. So we'll see where that one goes. But yeah, certainly yesterday I was told that West Ham readying a second bid. I think it'll be nearer the £50 million mark. Will that be enough to tempt Fulham? Who knows? What's also interesting is that Paulinho has also been offered to Chelsea, but apparently doesn't fit the profile they're looking for.
Why is that?
At the age of 28.
Oh, right. Okay, he's too old for Chelsea. 28.
Well, we know they like to dish out long-term contracts. If they were to give him a 5-year deal, he'd be 33 by the time that came to an end. There's not much resale value.
7 or 8 year contract, isn't it, for players at Chelsea? In which case he'd be getting his pension.
He'd be old as you if he got that.
Almost. But this is a problem for Fulham, isn't it? Because ultimately, I mean, you've already spelt it out. 1 year at Sporting, 1 year at Olympiacos, 6 months at Hull, 6 months at Watford, year and a half at Everton, 2 years at Fulham. This is a guy that does move around a lot. So Fulham fans maybe can be forgiven for thinking, you know, right, okay, we knew this was going to happen. If there's Fulham fans that are sitting there going, yeah, well, we're quite comfortable with it because we knew that Marco Silva was going to only stick around for a short period, 2 years, actually the longest he's ever spent anywhere since he was at Estoril. So maybe you've got the most out of him that you can. But if you're Marco Silva and you're looking at the squad, so far, what have they done to improve the squad from last year? Others around them have improved the squad. If they're going to lose Paulinho and lose Mitrovic, you can understand why he's thinking of something new, especially when someone's offering £40 million.
Well, the only piece of business they've done in terms of incomings is to extend the contract of Willian. Apart from that, they haven't added any fresh blood. It is only the 21st of July, so there is still time. I know they're working on a couple of deals, and I might have the name of a centre-back that they're trying to sign in the not-too-distant future. But Tosin Adarabioyo only has a year left on his contract. He's got suited as well. So that's why we were saying yesterday, this always threatened to be a difficult summer for Fulham after what was a really good first year back in the Premier League. Was it their highest ever Premier League finish?
Yeah, it was a great season for them. They played some good football. They played some teams at Craven Cottage off the park. I mean, I was at the Chelsea game. They were brilliant. They did really well in that match. And I've seen them over the course of the season. And I thought, you go back to the early part of the campaign and that brilliant 2-2 draw with Liverpool right at the start of the season. It was a terrific advert for what was to come. And it must be difficult being a fan of Fulham because it does feel like they're a little bit yo-yo between the Premier League and the Championship. And when they have a good season, the best players, the manager gets picked off and they have to go again. But I suppose if you're Fulham, you have to prepare for that eventuality. You have to think that's a possibility. And it's probably a little bit negligent on Tony Khan's part if he hasn't already thought about a replacement for Marco Silva, bearing in mind his history of moving around on a regular basis. It's not like it's any secret that he hasn't done it before. I wonder whether or not he's already thought about it, whether or not he's already got someone lined up. We did hear a name yesterday of someone who he might be interested in, certainly on the list. But also you've got the loyalty factor. And Marco Silva was talking about putting roots down when he joined Fulham because he knew that his career did look a little bit scattergun up until that point.
In fairness, listen, he might prove us wrong and he might decide to reject this money and sign a new deal at Fulham. But up until this point, I'm not sure that loyalty and Marco Silva are words that really go together. So let's see if he does try and prove us wrong on that front. I think for me, what it would frustrate me as a Fulham fan, Al Ackley are the club who are trying to poach their manager. But really, it doesn't matter if it's Al Hilal or Al Ackley. He's just going to go to Saudi Arabia for the money. He doesn't care which team he manages.
Well, we were talking about this yesterday. Mitrovic going to one of the clubs. Is it going to be the same club that he goes to? It doesn't really matter because in terms of sporting integrity, he's not going there to try and win the Champions League, is he? I mean, he's part of a rebrand of that league, and as we established yesterday, the idea is to become a top 10 league, however you quantify that, by 2030. So, it's just part of a rebrand of the league, really, more than anything else.
And the other question, if you're going to spend £40 million on a manager over 2 years, plus the release clause, so it's £46 million, why would you pick Marco Silva of all the Premier League managers? I would suggest that
because
he's the one they can get out. Exactly.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Look at the players and the managers that they're targeting. They're players and managers of clubs that are in mid-table, that can't earn the sort of money that you would earn if you're at Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United. The players are similar, players in their 20s that play for mid-table sides. Ruben Neves, Mitrovic, 28 years of age, players that are not necessarily going to play for the top clubs, but they're there for the remuneration. So the strategy seems right in terms of knowing the people that they can go and get. But you're right, it's not Jurgen Klopp who's going over there.
It's not Pep Guardiola. It's not Erik ten Hag. It's not even, it's not Mauricio Pochettino. So it's Marco Silva.
Interesting to see what happens then throughout the course of the day here on talkSPORT and whether or not Marco Silva ends up leaving. I wonder what the Fulham fans think about it. 3 weeks before the start of the new season, does this mean that there's going to have to be an aggressive approach in the transfer market before you turn into relegation contenders? I actually think because of the work that's been done previously, they should be all right in terms of relegation. There's Luton and Sheffield United who would be a little bit more concerned about, not necessarily saying that Fulham will be immune to it, but I'm sure they need a couple more through the door before they feel a little bit more confident. If you're a Fulham fan, what do you think? 03717223344. Are you disappointed that Marco Silva is set to leave your club after 2 years in your most successful season in the Premier League and move to Saudi Arabia? 03717223344. That's the number to call.